Hello, everybody. Happy New Year's Eve, 2020. Um, Boy, I have interesting things to share today. Um, we'll talk obviously about the coming new year and the past one, and we're going to try to do it in light of what's comforting. Um, and I will share that I had a big paradigm shift. Originally, well, first of all, I want to apologize for Tuesday night. Totally spaced. I Why? I think it was because the week between Christmas and New Year's, and I was working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, lots of people, and ended up Tuesday night going, "Oh no, it isn't the end of the world," as we obviously were here. Um, so we're doing this tonight, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of bring in the new year together. Um, At first, I really wanted to focus on how to see the whole year, last year and this next year. There's some value to that, but I realized as I was doing this, well, actually later today, or I'd say yesterday, I realized I don't think I want to do that. I will do a little bit of it, but really, there's problems with looking at things in week periods and month periods and all of it just what about one day at a time principle. And I'm hearing a lot of people say 2021 is going to be a much better year, and this is supposed to be the comfort hour. It's like, well, why would that be? Like, why would it be any necessarily better than last year? What is a day going to make? And I then realized it's because psychologically we analyze things this way. We will take something that bad that happens today in the morning, and depending on how I sort reality, I may say it was all bad. It ruined the whole day. If I want to do that, and for years I kind of lived that way, then I realized I could shorten it to just having a rough morning. And I could shorten it even smaller to just having a rough couple of hours. And then you don't have to spread it out. So that's what happens is some things happen during a week or a year or a month, and we say, wow, that was a bad time of year or a bad month, etc. I'm not trying to say you have to do this, that you can't look at 2021 with hope and things are going to be better. And boy, 2020 had its rough patches. The danger of doing that is if so-called bad things start to happen in 2021, then you start to go, oh no, all the 2021 is going to be bad. And then we're still at the mercy of how we're sorting time. In a sense, it's also sorting reality. So there's a great value of taking just one day at a time. But let's go back to what I was going to originally share. What I was going to originally share was this idea of how we have distortions, cognitive distortions, and how we see something as being good or bad. Like, and I think this would be a great opportunity to look at what was good about 2020. What did we learn from it? And thankfully, I had somehow the wherewithal to even think about doing that, but I did. For instance, and I'll just start rattling off what was good. We already know what was bad. Most of us have a collective bad experience with 2020, but what went well for me? Well, it caused me to pray more. It caused me to think not just about myself, which I think we all struggle with that, but like even just as simple as wearing a mask. Lately, if I wear a mask, why am I wearing a mask? Well, and I feel like I have to defend myself. But what's interesting is that helped me realize I need to not worry what people think. And whether they want to judge me for wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, etc., it doesn't matter. Um, but it caused me to realize I may be wearing a mask to prevent catching something, which then passes it on to someone else. And even that someone else might actually have people who are affected by my behaviors. So, for instance, I met a new friend for lunch on Sunday. It was really a lot of fun. And I wasn't even planning on lunch. We had coffee, and then I realized, hey, do you want to go to lunch? And so we walked into a place which actually had an outdoor, but it was kind of plastic outdoor tent like experience, and we could eat in there. And I thought, well, I just said, hey, are you okay with that? And then we were talking, and then I realized, based on your comfort level, are you okay with being inside, or should we just eat outside? Is everything we were doing. See, just the very act of not just doing a lot of things without thinking about how it affects other people, it can be valuable. It could be useful. And actually, after he thought about it, he says, well, my sister actually has more stricter guidelines. And so actually that would actually help me feel better if we do that. And he didn't initially have that. So I think being prayerful and meditative about our choices in general and how they affect others is a great thing. It sounds negative what I'm going to say, but it's positive. Like, if anything, being around death, with people passing away, I'd say there's probably 6 to 7 people who have passed away in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks, maybe 2 months, have caused me to really think about death more, which then causes me to think about, how do I want to live? What's important? Why am I afraid of so many things that seem petty? Like sharing the truth with people, what people think. It's like, this is a matter of life and death. So it's helped me sort out what's relevant and what's irrelevant in my life. Another positive from 2020 is it gave me time to be alone more. I'm not as busy running around to large groups of people anymore. I go to church. That's probably the largest group of people I'm near, but I have more time for reflection and being quiet. I did get to go into nature more. We went, as you know, from past live streams. We went to Idaho a couple of times. We visited the Port Townsend area a couple of times, and it's made me realize that it's pretty safe outside in nature. I mean, safe from the coronavirus, if we're worried about that, but I think it's going to drive a lot of people more into nature. Like, what kind of entertainment can we get by walking in the forest, or going on a hike, or going to a lake, or camping, or going on a stream? Like, we went canoeing, or not canoeing, kayaking. We have this joke between my son and myself. I purposefully miscall the canoe, no, the kayak a canoe. I say, can we canoe? He says, Dad, you mean kayak? And we just do this on purpose. It's just a playful thing. So we got more into kayaking. I think that another positive is it's been a push to be healthier, because if we want to prevent getting the coronavirus or having really bad reactions, exercise, having less body fat, better immune system, better sleep, healthier food. I mean, these are the things we can control. We can focus on masks, which may not be that effective. They may be. I'm not saying there's no effectiveness. But how much more effectiveness would it be if I lost 40 pounds? I'm not saying me personally, but lose 20 pounds and get back to a better weight. How much would it benefit me to eat right, to exercise, to have good sleep, and to lower stress? in my life. Crises like what we've experienced in 2020 can really produce some good things. Another positive takeaway is technology. I like technology. I wouldn't call myself totally a techie, but around the people I'm around, people consider me probably more technologically aware. But I've learned to do live streaming. I'm now considering doing classes online through either a company called Teachable or another one. And you'll be aware of that, and where I can post videos of how to overcome various problems like anxiety or sex addiction or chronic pain or alcoholism. We're taking people through the steps, and they'll be all pre-done. I have plenty to say, and I think it's great value for what the cost will be. It'll help me serve other people that can't afford just regular counseling or coaching, and also provide me some income. So yeah, technology. Actually, this comfort hour is an interesting challenge and opportunity to be more creative and to do things to be able to share what I wanted to share. And so that's a positive from 2020. I've spent more time with family. It seems like I haven't spent more time with family in some ways, not my immediate family, but other family, but I've been more purposeful about how do I see my family? How do I do it safe? And to realize there are people that aren't seeing family and that have passed away, and their family really wasn't there for them during that whole difficult time. I just had a situation, and it's like that looks like a really downside, but I think some people are going to be tougher and stronger and more courageous, and some of us might not be that. I was trying to avoid something on the negative, but I think it's important to say that not all of us are going to be stronger. Those that want to be stronger will be stronger. And I'm here to help people be stronger and to get over fears and to get over depression. Um, Before all this happened, I thought about this a lot. I thought a lot about the Great Depression, probably once a week. Thought about how our ancestors had to deal with world wars and how it affected them and how they had to ration food. And I mean, it was just a different world, how they had to learn to live with less. Um, I don't know as we've had that difficult of a time. I say we, I maybe a lot of people who are without an income are suffering greatly, but it seems that um, things could be harder, and I think we should prepare for things being harder. I think that's always a good thing, to prepare for the difficulty in a positive way versus have it come upon us unaware. Um, well, that's another positive. I'm segueing into the positive of this is the national disaster, the world disaster, and it's some would argue it's not a disaster, and I could see that the media has made it much worse than it really is, and that's really unfortunate because then it almost causes some people to go the other extreme and not even see that there's any disaster, but there's disaster there. That's why I really try to walk this middle road between seeing the dangers of the coronavirus, but also seeing that it has been trumped up to be much worse than it is. I try to use common sense or just human reasoning with God's grace to know how to take reasonable measures to keep myself, my family, and my clients safe. So another segue into another thing is I think that this is if we see the downsides of what's happened in 2020, the gift that's been given us is we now know a little bit better of how people can handle crises and how we could better prepare to help those that are struggling. I've seen some people go into denial about it on either side, or I've seen extremism. I've seen people struggle with anxiety in a great way. Um, Without the physical, emotional, spiritual, political, social challenges, you wouldn't see where we really are. It's like a test. I was watching a video from a holy person who said this small virus, it's a small test for us, that really there's going to be more difficult things to come. And I did think, and I guess I'm going to talk about people that I'm hearing saying 2021 is going to be much better. I'm really not that negative, but if I'm prayerful and spiritual and thinking logically, even psychologically, why is 2021 going to be better? Like, what is a day going to happen? Like, what's going to happen tonight at midnight that's going to change anything? Well, if we stand back and look at human nature, this is what we do. We attribute a cut in time, a slice in time that now we can make it better. There's some value to that. But when I was prayerful and asked, well, what does the Bible talk in terms of? Does it talk in terms of years, like a new year? A tiny bit, but it talks about a new day all the time. Jesus even said, do not think about tomorrow, think about today. While I could be planning for a better new year, I, in theory, could actually be taken a couple of hours from now. And I'm not trying to be weird here, but that's how we should live. So what is the magical change from 2020 to 2021 going to do? And I'm not saying that there's no change, because I think people will try harder after a new day or a new week or a new month or a new year to try to make things better. People do New Year's resolutions. They feel like, okay, now I'll lose the weight. Why not do it on December 30th? Okay. But I don't want to be anti that, but I think that it's something to ponder. Also, pondering this, I want to share that thinking about New Year's and around Christmas, and it's similar to one's birthday, we start to analyze, where am I in life? Where is the world? How old am I? Oh, wow, are there more wrinkles? What have I accomplished? What have I not accomplished? What's wrong with me? What's right with me? All that could be considered navel gazing and could lead to depression. And is it useful? I would say if we did it daily or weekly and got used to it, like in a 12-step fashion where we analyze our life in a positive way and ask, where could I make things better? I would say go for it. It's a good thing. But if we do it to where, oh no, now I'm 58, I only have a few years left, or oh no, I wanted to do more this year, what's wrong with me? But if we use it to say, tomorrow I want to start a new day, and the next day I want to start a new day. I will confess that there are things I want to now really implement for 2021. And so I'm using the new year. One is to try to find more balance in work, to do some of these projects I've been putting off, to exercise more, to have more energy, to be able to do these things, but by cutting out the unnecessary. On that note, I'm not saying I would get rid of the comfort hour, but I want it to transform into something more powerful, more useful. And it may be that I'm using the same time to offer classes or to be more productive. I I will share that my son pointed out that I have like 2,000 plus subscribers on my sexual recovery channel. And he says, "What are you doing live stream here?" I was like, "Well, I like doing live stream here, but in reality, I should do a live stream there to help those people that are wanting help." The reality is, I put up years ago in 2009 a video on how to identify sex addiction. People loved it. I have a few audio downloads for sale, but I think I need to put my efforts into really helping people change that area of their life if they want change. Um, so, in a way, I am excited about the new year. Yes, I will feel a little bit of difference. I don't want to say relief, because, see, that would be magical thinking. Um, in my earlier preparing for this, I was thinking of how we could look at black and white thinking, how that affects how we look at the last year. Well, black and white thinking is going to say it's all good or it's all bad. And that's not the best way to think of things if you want to be healthier. Um, Catastrophic thinking. How does that apply? Well, there was a lot of catastrophic thinking there. Media was playing off of catastrophic thinking. Um, let's see. I don't have the book near me, but I was working with someone with the book, and we were going through distortions. What are some of the other ones? Cause and effect. That we have this fake sense of over control with the world there. I will say this, why don't we transition into what's the one day at a time principle? Because I do like that. I like that a lot. There was a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Listening. That's funny, actually. Slip of the tongue. How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. He quotes Sir Dr. William Osler. He's actually quite famous. Let's see. I've got to look this up here because William Osler, great physician, and I mentioned him before. Yeah, it's Osler, and the Canadian physician, one of 4 founding professors of Johns Hopkins University. He actually struggled with worry himself, and he suggests how to stop worrying. At least one big principle, which was he was on a ship, and he says there's these tight compartments that can be blocked out that lets the water out so the ship can go up and down. And he says if we could live in such tight compartments so that we really only take one day at a time. Now, as good as this is psychological and everything, Jesus actually talks about this. Jesus says, take no thought for tomorrow, for today has enough worry about itself. Now, if we applied that principle to people who are worried about taking a vaccination, or I don't want to take the vaccination, or is this the end times or this is not the end times, or what's going to happen on January 20th or 21st when, one of these people are going to take office, or what's going to happen with the economy, no, this would say white or watertight compartments, like compartmentalize that from your life. What if by doing that, it gave you such peace such ability to restore and renew that your life would transform. That would be great. Have we ever really done that? Have we actually ever done that? I'm going to quote a verse here from the Bible. This is, I want to get into a translation I like. King James or New King James would be fine. I'm just going to read it. It's Isaiah 40. So one way to remember the prophet Isaiah, remember 40, like there's 40 days in a fast or 40 days of rain, etc. Comfort ye my people, comfort ye, my people, saith the Lord God. Speak ye comfortably to Jerusalem, and cry unto her that her warfare is accomplished, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has conceived of the Lord's hand double for all her sins. I'm sorry, forgive me here. I'm going to go to New King James. I thought I could do it. That's the one I use, really. Oh, it's even in a nicer format. Comfort ye, comfort, boy, Lord, please forgive me, people. Okay, comfort, yes, comfort my people, says your God. Speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, and every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. The voice said, cry out, and he said, what shall I cry? All flesh is grass. It sounds familiar. And all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, because the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass, the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our God stands forever. O Zion, you who bring tidings, get up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, you who bring good tidings, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God shall come with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those who are with young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, measured heaven with a span, and calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance. Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or who as his counselor has taught him? With whom did he take counsel, and who instructed him and taught him in the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? Behold, the nations are as a drop in a bucket, and are counted as a small dust on the scales. Look, he lifts up the isles as a very little thing, and Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor its beasts sufficient for a burnt offering. All nations before him are as nothing, and they have counted by him less than nothing and worthless. To whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare to him? The workman molds an image. The goldsmith overspreads it with gold, and the silversmith casts silver chains. Whoever is too impoverished for such a contribution chooses a tree that will not rot. He seeks for himself a skillful workman to prepare a carved image that will not totter. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He brings the princes to nothing. He makes the judges of the earth useless. Scarcely shall they be planted, scarcely shall they be sown, scarcely shall their stalk take root in the earth, when he will also blow on them, and they will wither, and the whirlwind will take them away like stubble. To whom then will you liken me, or to whom shall I be equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things, who brings out their hosts by number, who calls them all by name. By the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel? My way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over by my God. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might he increases strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fail. But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Thanks for letting me read all of that. What's interesting is I read passages and snippets of Isaiah 40 throughout the last couple of months. And to read it all together like that, I did something for me and hopefully for you, to just point out a few things that jump out. Obviously, the comfort ye, my people. It's like, I think of that. It's the God of all comfort. The voice of the one crying out in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord. That's like St. John the Baptist. All flesh is like grass. Its loveliness is like the flower of the field. This I pondered a lot. I really got it. I think I got more of it today, or not today, but this couple of months. I realized flowers, that real ones, don't last forever, like the poem said. That's how our lives are like. And Jesus told us this, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm pretty here forever. But as precious and beautiful as flowers are, and even in the midst of all our human tragedies and how long flowers have existed, we still give flowers to people. There's something special about them. And I will admit, years ago, I was too pragmatic to buy them. I felt like, well, they're just going to die. That would be like the God saying, well, why invent mankind? They're just going to die. That's kind of a poor connection. But there's something really important that I wanted to share, is that is the point, that our lives are so much more precious. And even though from some people's eyes they look like they don't have great value, I think that it has great value, whether you're unborn in your mother's womb, whether you're 80 or 90 or 100, whether you are working or not working, whether you have an able body that's able to do flips, and a singer that can sing beautiful melodies, or a brilliant mind that can create and do wonderful things with it, or if you can't, that there is something that's really important about our existence, and that we are like that, and that our life is short. We just don't perceive it as short, but it is. And if we perceived it as short, we would quickly have that urgency to continue to repent, to try to seek God with all our heart, to love God and love our neighbors as ourselves. We wouldn't get into such small stuff and let them rob us of what's really important. O Zion, you who bring good tidings, get up into the high mountains. O Jerusalem, you who bring good tidings, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up and not be afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. The Lord God will come with a strong hand. His arm shall rule for him, and behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him, and he will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs with his arm and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those who are young. It's quite touching because there's different people who need different things here. And God is going to gently lead those who are young. He's going to carry us to his heart. He will gather us who are like lambs. Yeah, no, it's quite touching. And then Isaiah says, who has measured the waters of the hollow? Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, measured heaven with a span, calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or who has been his counselor? See, in the midst of everything that's happened in 2020, we hopefully realize we're not God. Politicians aren't God. Science isn't God. Psychology isn't God. God is God, and God is so beyond that no one was there to teach him the path of justice, who taught him knowledge. It says, behold, the nations are as a drop in a bucket, and counted as small dust on the scales. He lifted up the islands as a very little thing. It says all nations before him were as nothing. Now, what's fascinating is I read that another time, and as I was realizing, wow, there's a lot of nationality and nations and this and that. God understands nations. It's not like he totally ignores nations. But again, similar to 2020 year and 2021 year, it's just the way humans are coding time here. We see peoples in terms of nations. America's different than Canadians and Mexicans and Germans and people from Sudan and people from China and people from South Korea and New Guinea, and I've interacted with Australians, and we tend to separate. And this verse encourages us to see that God sees us as people. And it goes into now he sits above the circle of the earth. And its inhabitants are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a curtain. Now, this is used, I think, in Psalm 104 as well. But the metaphor feels to me is like a curtain can go like this and go like this. And in Orthodox churches, there's curtains that are open and closed certain times. There was the curtain, the veil that was in the temple that was rent in two or torn in two when Christ died on the cross. It showed that the pathway was open up for us to go to God. So the heavens are like a curtain. So there's something beyond what we see. And it says he brings princes to nothing. He can do that. That's why We would never blame God, but God's responsible for allowing things to happen. And if we're praying for knowledge of God's will, then we have to see those things as good. And if we're not wanting God's will in our life, then we can't assure ourselves that everything that's happening to me is good. And yet, God can use those so called bad things that have been allowed to come into the life to bring us closer to Him. Let's not confuse love with just always a warm, fuzzy feeling where we get whatever we want. That's something else. I won't even say what it is, but there's many words. And I'm not saying I don't want that at times. It's just that love, God's goodness to me, and mercy is everything I need to be saved. And that's why, if there's a deep fear any of us have out there of what's going to happen in the world, will I survive? Will I be strong enough? It's about, deep down, it should be about, I don't want to miss out on God. I don't want to miss out on what His plan is for me. I don't want to miss out on His mercy or His salvation. How do I not miss out on that? Well, first of all, don't trust in oneself. I just have to want it. I have to trust in God, and I have to seek God with all my heart to get that. God supplies all the rest. And if there is a devil, which there is, then he tempts us to think that we won't make it, to despair, that somehow there's mistakes, and then the media and this and that and all that, and we get tangled up in that. But the reality is, it's as simple as this. God loves us. He wants to save us. All the context by which we're being saved, whether it's 2020, 2021, whether we're in peaceful times or good times, He wants to save us regardless. And another thing I was pondering is that, say like 2021 is going to be a good year, whatever that is, which means we won't have all this bad stuff. Okay, is that actually really good for us? How do we know what's good? Maybe good is what we've had, and it's caused us to be healthier and stronger for it than if I just got whatever I wanted. I will use a little example. Like, this has been a pretty comfy Christmas for me. Like, I got to go to the church services I wanted to. I got to eat some nice food and some candy and stuff like that. I have a nice comfy bed. I have a nice kitchen now to cook in. Last year we didn't. Is this good or bad? Well, I don't know. After too much candy or sweets, I don't feel like that good. It tastes so good, but is it really good for my body? Probably not. I'm not saying it's evil to have candy. I had like 2 pieces of divinity, which would have been the last thing I probably would have eaten, because I'm so concerned about sugar. But this person at church made them. Actually, it was actually better than I thought. I actually had another piece. What made it taste good is they weren't that sweet. I thought, well, this is kind of paleo in a sense that it's egg. And I thought one could probably make this with alternative sweeteners. And it had nuts. No, I thought it was actually surprisingly good. And it's probably because of the wonderful woman's heart who made it. If she's watching out there, I really appreciate that. That was sweet. And when I said, oh, that's sweet, she laughed, said, yep, it is sweet, literally. But not as sweet as I thought. And that's what made it better. But I had to then say, enough. Now I'm tempting myself with wanting to try another one. But my point is that what we think is good isn't always good. And yeah, it just isn't always. And we will be so much happier, have so much more peace if we don't try to insist on what we think is good. And our fears will begin to melt away if we put our trust in God and not on our own understanding. I'm convinced of that. There's more passage here about the greatness of his might, the strength of his power. Um, Now, this is the passage I was really the famous one and the one that I was thinking why I wanted to bring this tonight. I don't know why it's so touching, and especially touching when you hear this sung in the passages of Handel's Messiah. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, neither faints nor is weary. During 2020, God has not slept. He is much as alive as he's going to be next year and the year before. He is everlasting. He has not grown faint in helping us at all. His understanding is unsearchable. That is a truism. So we don't need to worry about why we don't understand what he's doing. Any of us who have found ourselves weak, it says he gives power to the weak. And there is a book that's not over there anymore, but it's a great book, His Strength. It's called Strength and Weakness. And I might double dip and do another reading on this. I did a reading. I might have uploaded it or not. I'm not sure. It's copyrighted, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't infringing on that. But it's so good. I read like a whole chapter of it just to get the information to people. But it's by Bishop Ireini, Ireini. It's called Strength and Weakness. It's about $10. It's a tiny book, but it's worth $10. It's worth more than $10. It works that way sometimes, that I can be so down and out. Well, I'm being a little bit exaggerating, but I can be down and out. I can read a book. This is a prayer book. I can start to pray, and all of a sudden, as down as I was, now I'm fine, at least for a while. This doesn't save up. You just do one day at a time. You pray one prayer at a time. You ask forgiveness, one asking of forgiveness at a time. The shower I take today doesn't help me for the shower I need tomorrow. It says, but the creator of the ends of the earth neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the weak. And to those who have no might, he increases strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall utterly fall. Yeah, we may have felt like that, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. God is calling us to do this. He is calling us to run and not be weary. He's calling us to walk and not faint. It says in the end days, people might faint with fear. And some people would be deceived. And I think that's scaring a lot of people. Like, oh no, I don't want to be deceived. Well, then don't. Pray and ask God to guide your every step, and he will not let you be deceived. It's that simple. Those who struggle with OCD look for, well, how might this not work? And then they overthink it, and then they get kind of, we'll say, mini crazy. And it's like, no, stop. Just trust in God. This is what we do. We trust in God, not in ourselves. We trust our God. We don't trust in princes and sons of men, in whom there is no salvation. We will pray and God will guide us. And some of these decisions are difficult and confusing, but we ask holy people around us and we continue to read the Bible, and God will let us know. And if it's not perfectly clear, then we wait until it is. This waiting on the Lord is pretty powerful. And I think that I'm talking about the next year here, and I am making an arbitrary, I'm going to try to do this more, but I really want to practice waiting on God more, waiting to be able to gather that strength. I've heard from holy people that there's great value in reading. Well, for Orthodox Christians in Orthodox Psalter, he talks about reading two stanzas, no, sorry, stacies, and then doing a few other prayers, which I could talk about later. But I just want to emphasize, how long is that? About 15 minutes. He says that that will help us during these difficult times. I thought this fascinating is that I just happened to be doing some videos on psalm reading and how important it is to do psalm reading. And that might have got posted. It might not have, but I think it did. And yeah, I think it got posted. So I encourage you with that. I encourage you with the one day at a time principle. If you process one day at a time, then 2020 isn't necessarily a good or a bad year. It just was 365 days, and it's a measure of time. And we have another 365 days, I suppose. And let us take each day by starting each day asking God to direct all our thinking, to help us to not be selfish, to not struggle with fear, to trust and have courage, to not have resentments, to let go and forgive, to try and improve. That's a positive about the New Year's resolution, but to try and improve. We could do that many times a year, to try to have time for meditation and prayer and spiritual reading and fellowship, and to reach out. Oh, another positives. I'm waffling in, but there's some positives of 2020 I didn't want to leave out. One is I met like two new friends. It's like, wow, these are really fun people to be near. We share similar interests in psychology and Christianity and helping people. I also had a class that was an 8-week class. That was a highlight. I can't say that it wasn't. It was a good highlight. 8 weeks, 3 hours. Just learned a lot, and so excited about using them. Got into some really good books. I didn't have as much time as I wanted to read them, but I read them. But there is really some good books out there, and maybe if you find yourself having more time to read some good books. Actually, I'll add another third. I made friends with an Orthodox Christian priest. Pretty neat. I also had some fun times with my daughter for Thursday lunches, which I mentioned. That was a new habit or behavior, a new way of being, because she's a teacher and she was teaching and would have a break. So in a strange way, the circumstances lended themselves to us having that. If she were working with kids and you just don't show up at the school to have lunch, but since she's working from home, this brings up this idea of, are there blessings from working at home? Yeah. At first, one might go, no, don't change. We've all been driving to work for years. There may be some bad side to staying home and working from home. Well, I didn't really think that, but I had that kind of rolling around in my head. There's a lot of pluses. And it's not like we're just sitting around doing nothing. Some of the pluses is just not spending so much time in the car back and forth. Two is a lot of times the clients that are doing sessions from home, I think, are almost more comfortable. They're in their cozy home, they have their cat usually about them. They I get to see a little bit more about the world. Um, I think it's convenient for them to just push a button and there you are. Not having to get in and out of a car or a waiting room experience and all that. No, it's just pretty convenient. It saves time because my 9 o'clock just is there. They don't have to drive and in rush hour traffic to get back and forth. Um, I've had people open up more. I think it's because it feels different. There's probably some losses for sure, but there seems to be a lot of benefits. I think some of us have worked harder, not tonight, but having better backgrounds. I think people are more mindful of that. Um, let's see. Um, oh, it's a different way to talk, but like when I'm talking with people, say like I wanted to show them a screen and a list of things or the AA book or something, it's so convenient to push a button and then they see that. I don't really see it that way in real life. A person has their book, I have my book, and here I can just show them the passage that's highlighted. I can then send handouts to them just immediately. I can send them the link. It's just right there. Sometimes it's recorded. It's just, oh, and I've been doing coaching like this for years, but I've had clients that wanted to see me from like an hour to 2 hour away. Well, now that insurance covers it, they're happy as can be. Yeah, no, that's a big funny thing that happened from an insurance point of view and teleconferencing. I'd say for 20 years, people asked, "Oh, can't the insurance cover it, the drive?" No, I can actually counsel anybody in Washington State easily. I wouldn't necessarily if they're in so far away, but yeah, no, it's a real different world that way. Doctor visits. It's amazing how much can be done through teleconferencing by interacting with a doctor that way. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I don't know if it's less efficient um, type of medicine. I think that we need that one-on-one interaction. In fact, this has probably made us grown more longing for that one-on-one in-person experience, actually getting a hug. But I think that this is well, it is just what it is. It's an interesting blessing. Another blessing of 2020 is we're tidying up our home. We're making our home more beautiful to live in. I was on the phone with someone. We haven't had like, I'm not saying this is a bad thing. We just haven't had chairs, like a couch, in probably a couple of years. So what do we sit on? Lawn chairs. It sounds ridiculous, but they're these folding lawn chairs, or we got some used chairs. Why? Well, now we got some, but it's going to be a while. I was on the phone with a furniture company and says, "Why is it going to take 4 to 5 months?" And they said they've had such an over, over like they're overworked because everybody wants them. And I go, aha, people are staying home more. And so they want to beautify their homes. They want to make gardens. That's a positive, I think. I think it's caused a lot of us to slow down. We're spending less time in the car. This is good for the environment. It's good for us. I do think that people are walking more and doing outside activities, and they may actually get to know their neighbors more. I know that we've done a lot more walking out there. So, well, Um, I hopefully that this finds you well. I realized I did this at such an odd time that many of you might come later. But I plan to be here next Tuesday. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to let me know. Also, click that subscribe and like button if you like what you see. I feel funny asking for subscriptions and likes, but if you're interested in the sexual addiction recovery, I'll be doing some live streams there. That's under the Sexual Recovery channel. Google Erik Bohlin Sexual Recovery YouTube. If you get there, then you're going to get to that channel and you can subscribe because I'll be doing some fascinating things there. I'm also going to be doing some work with the mind body symptoms as well as chronic pain solution.net is I think where that's going to be. So a um, happy new year to you, but also a happy one day at a time, which is just finishing out this day and then looking forward to the next. God bless. I love you all. Take care.